In the sprawling city of Neapolis, under the glowing lights and between the high-tech buildings that stretched up to the clouds, lived a woman named Emily Kane. On the surface, she was nothing more than a quiet and unremarkable nanny. Emily worked for one of the wealthiest families in the city, taking care of their children and maintaining the household. To the outside world, she was just another face in the background, a woman with soft brown eyes and kind, gentle features. She didn't stand out in the crowd, and that was exactly how she liked it. Her employers, the Pritchard family, had no idea of the depths of Emily's past. To them, she was simply a trusted caretaker who made their home feel warm and safe. Emily loved the children dearly, taking time to read them stories, play games, and cook them meals. She was a calming presence in their lives. But she was also a woman with secrets. Secrets she had carefully hidden for years. Before becoming a nanny, Emily had led a very different life. She was the daughter of a notorious assassin, a man who had once been feared across the galaxy. He was a mercenary, skilled in combat and covert operations, and he had trained Emily from a young age. Her father's name was whispered in the darkest corners of the universe, but Emily had never wanted that life. When she was old enough, she ran away, changing her identity and hiding from the violent world her father had immersed her in. The skills her father had taught her were sharp, honed over years of rigorous training. She could read a room in seconds, spot a potential threat before it even showed itself, and think her way out of any situation. Her mind was always alert, always calculating. But the life of a nanny, of caring for children, had given her a sense of purpose that she hadn't known she could have. It allowed her to live in peace for a while, to experience a life that was free from violence and bloodshed. But deep down, she knew that peace wouldn't last forever. It was a typical afternoon when everything changed. Emily was sitting in the garden, watching the children play. The youngest, a 6-year-old boy named Max, was running around with his sister Lily, who was 8. Their laughter filled the air, and for a moment, Emily allowed herself to enjoy the simple beauty of the moment. She had worked so hard to create this peaceful life for them, and she had come to cherish it more than anything. But something felt off. A strange shiver ran down her spine, and her instincts flared to life. She looked around the garden, her gaze sweeping across the surroundings, but she saw nothing unusual. Still, the sense of unease didn't leave her. It was then that she noticed it. A subtle change in the wind, a slight shift in the atmosphere. She had seen it before, during her time as an assassin, and she knew what it meant. They were here. Her mind raced, and her body moved without hesitation. She quickly called the children inside, her voice calm but urgent. Max and Lily, sensing the change in her tone, followed her without question. As they made their way back into the house, Emily kept her eyes sharp. She didn't want to panic, but she knew that the calm exterior she had maintained for so long was about to shatter. She could hear the faint hum of distant engines. She knew what that meant. Someone was coming for the family, and she was the only one who could protect them. The children were safe for the moment, but she had no illusions. This wasn't just a break-in or a robbery. This was a professional hit. Emily's mind went into overdrive as she quickly assessed the situation. She led the children to the safe room hidden beneath the house, a place she had prepared just in case. It was a small, secure space, equipped with everything they might need to survive for days if necessary. She had thought of everything: food, water, medical supplies, and a communication system to contact her old allies if the worst happened. She wasn't the nanny they thought she was. She was something far more dangerous. The Pritchards had always trusted her, but they didn't know her true background. She had kept it from them, not wanting to burden them with the truth. They believed she was just a quiet woman with a simple life. They had no idea that Emily had once been one of the most skilled assassins in the galaxy. As the children huddled in the safe room, Emily moved quickly through the house, shutting off all communication devices and locking every door and window. She wasn't sure how many attackers were coming, but she knew one thing for certain: they wouldn't get through her. She had survived far worse in her past, and she would do whatever it took to keep the children safe. The house was a fortress, but it wasn't invincible. Emily had spent years making sure that no one could break into it undetected, but she knew that the assassins who were coming were not ordinary criminals. They had been sent by a powerful enemy, one who had likely learned of Emily's true identity. They knew she was the only one who could stop them, and they had come to eliminate her and the family she had sworn to protect. Emily's heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her emotions in check. She had been trained for moments like this. The quiet, unassuming woman who had lived a simple life was gone. In her place stood a deadly force, a woman who could outthink, outfight, and outmaneuver any enemy. She made her way to the security room, checking the monitors for any sign of movement. The first assassin was already inside the grounds, moving through the shadows, his steps calculated and deliberate. He was good, but he wasn't good enough. Emily had prepared for this moment her entire life. She had planned for every scenario, even the ones she hoped would never come. She knew the exact locations of every hidden weapon she had stashed around the house, and she had already rigged the perimeter with high-tech surveillance systems. The assassins would soon realize that they were not dealing with an ordinary woman. They were dealing with someone who had been trained to kill. The first shot was fired moments later. It missed by mere inches, but it was enough to confirm her worst fear. The enemy was here. They had made their move, and now Emily had no choice but to face the ghosts of her past. But she was ready. She moved through the house with the grace of a predator, silent and deadly. Her training kicked in as she set up traps and prepared for the next wave of attackers. She wasn't just protecting the family. She was preparing to hunt down every last one of them. As the day turned into night, Emily watched the children through the security cameras, knowing that they were safe for now. But she couldn't afford to wait. The assassins would be back, and she would be ready. She had fought battles in far worse places than this, and she would win. She wasn't just a nanny. She wasn't just a woman hiding from her past. She was someone who could face the darkness and emerge victorious. The first battle had begun, and Emily was determined to finish it. Emily's mind raced as she moved quickly through the house, checking every corner, every room, and every exit. The assassins had breached the estate's perimeter, but she wouldn't let them get close to the children. She knew this place like the back of her hand. Every nook and cranny was mapped out in her mind, and she had spent years preparing for this kind of moment. As she reached the security room, she pressed a button on the wall, and a hidden panel slid open, revealing a compartment filled with high-tech weapons and surveillance equipment. She had made sure that everything was in its place, ready for a situation like this. She grabbed a small, sleek device and attached it to her wrist. It was a silent communicator, a tool she hadn't used in years, but she knew it could connect her with her old allies, people she had helped in the past. If things got worse, she might need them. Emily's fingers brushed over the weapons, her mind calculating. She didn't want to fight if she didn't have to. She had spent so much of her life trying to escape violence, trying to be someone else, to be normal. But as her fingers touched the cold metal of a hidden gun, she realized that she had no choice. She was the only one who could protect the Pritchard family. She had to be quick. The first assassin had already infiltrated the house, moving through the shadows with the precision of a trained killer. Emily could hear his footsteps echoing in the hallways, his breathing shallow as he crept closer. He was skilled, but she was better. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had to think fast, stay ahead of him. She moved to the security monitors, watching as the assassin entered the living room. He was searching for something, anything that could give him an advantage. Emily knew his type. These assassins were trained to hunt down their targets with ruthless efficiency. They didn't care who they hurt or what they destroyed along the way. They were only concerned with completing the mission, but they had underestimated her. She set the trap with calm precision, tapping in a series of commands on the control panel. A small camera in the living room began to scan the area, transmitting data back to Emily. She could see the assassin moving closer to the children's bedroom. He was getting too close. She couldn't let him reach them. She grabbed the gun, checking it quickly. It was a small, compact weapon, easy to conceal but deadly if used correctly. Emily wasn't planning to kill him, not yet. She needed to know who sent him and why they were targeting the Pritchards. But if it came down to it, she would do whatever it took to protect them. She moved swiftly through the house, her footsteps silent on the marble floors. She could hear the assassin's heavy breathing growing louder as she got closer to the living room. She waited, watching him on the monitor. He was turning his back to her, focused on the hallway. This was her chance. With a sudden burst of speed, Emily moved from the shadows, stepping into the living room behind him. She aimed the gun at his back, her hand steady, her breath calm. He froze, sensing something was wrong. Before he could turn, Emily spoke in a low voice. "I wouldn't move if I were you." The assassin froze, his body tense. He knew he was outmatched. Emily had been trained for this. She had fought many like him in her past. The only difference now was that she had something to protect. She wasn't the cold-blooded killer she used to be, but she still had the skills, the instincts. She could still survive. The assassin slowly turned, his eyes narrowing as he faced her. He didn't speak, but Emily could see the recognition in his gaze. He had heard of her, of the woman who had disappeared from the world of assassins years ago. But she wasn't the same woman he had been told about. She had changed, adapted, and now she was more dangerous than ever. "You don't belong here," Emily said quietly. "But I'm sure you know that already." The assassin smiled, a cold, knowing smile. "You're a long way from your old life, Emily," he said, his voice low. "But you can't hide forever." Emily's grip on the gun tightened. "I'm not hiding, I'm protecting." The assassin took a step forward, but Emily didn't flinch. She had no intention of shooting him just yet. She needed answers.
"Who sent you?" she demanded.
The assassin chuckled softly, his eyes glinting with a mix of respect and amusement. "You've gotten soft, haven't you? You think you can just ask questions and get answers? This isn't the world you used to know." Emily's jaw tightened. "I don't want to kill you," she said, her voice steady. "But I will if I have to." The assassin's smile faded, and for a moment there was silence. Then he shifted his stance, moving toward the door.
Emily's eyes widened as she realized what he was doing. He wasn't going to fight.
He was trying to escape, but she couldn't let him leave. Not without knowing who was behind this. In one swift motion, Emily moved forward, blocking his path. She wasn't about to let him slip away. He was part of a much bigger plan, and she needed to stop it before it was too late. The assassin hesitated, his eyes flicking between the gun in Emily's hand and the door behind him. "You're wasting your time," he said. "You can't stop what's coming." Emily's heart raced, but she didn't let it show. She had to stay focused. "Who sent you?" she repeated, her voice cold and firm. For a moment, it seemed like the assassin might remain silent. But then he spoke, his words coming slowly. "There are others. They're already inside. You'll never stop them all. They'll kill you, Emily."
"They'll kill everyone." Emily's pulse quickened, but she didn't let her emotions get the best of her.
"Who?" she asked again. But before the assassin could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hallway. Emily's eyes narrowed, her hand instinctively gripping the gun tighter. More were coming. She didn't have time to waste on this one. Without another word, She shot. The bullet grazed the assassin's shoulder, forcing him to stumble back. Emily moved fast, knocking him unconscious with a quick strike to the head. He slumped to the floor, and she wasted no time. She grabbed his comm device, checking it quickly. There was no time for hesitation. She had to find out who else was involved and stop them before they reached the children. She couldn't afford to lose any more time. As Emily moved toward the hallway, she felt a strange mixture of fear and determination. The assassins were inside, and they were closing in. But Emily was ready. She had faced this before. She knew how to survive, and she was going to make sure that the Pritchard family did too. The house was silent, but Emily's mind was anything but. She stood in the hallway, her eyes scanning every corner, her senses sharp. The assassin she had captured was unconscious, but he had left behind a trail of information that only raised more questions. She couldn't afford to wait any longer. Every moment was a risk. Every second that passed meant the assassins were getting closer to the children. The safe room she had hidden them in was secure for now, but she couldn't be certain it would stay that way for long. She had to move quickly, and she had to be smart. Emily's hand gripped the gun, its weight familiar. It had been years since she had used it, but she knew it was the right tool for the job. Her heart was calm, but her mind was racing with the knowledge of the danger she faced. These assassins were no ordinary threat. They had a purpose. They had a plan, and Emily was the only thing standing in their way. She moved quietly through the house, her footsteps barely making a sound on the polished floors. She passed the kitchen, glancing briefly at the knives hidden in drawers and the various tools she had placed around the house over the years. It was all part of her preparation, a preparation she had hoped would never be necessary. But now, it was all she had. As she passed through the hallway, she noticed the subtle signs of a struggle. The way the rug was slightly askew, the faint scuff marks on the walls where someone had pushed against them in haste. The house was no longer the peaceful haven it had once been. It had become a battleground. The first assassin she had encountered was out of commission, but Emily knew that there were more. She had heard the footsteps earlier, the faint noise of bodies moving through the halls. They were everywhere, and they weren't going to stop until they had finished what they started. She needed to be one step ahead of them. She needed to know where they were and what they were doing. Emily moved to the security room again, her mind focused on the task at hand. The monitors blinked to life as she keyed in the access code. The cameras were still active, giving her a real-time view of the house. It wasn't much, but it was enough. The first thing Emily noticed was the movement in the back garden. One of the assassins had made it outside. He was crouched low, moving through the shadows, trying to stay out of sight. Emily didn't need to be told who he was after. He was searching for the children, and she wasn't about to let him find them. She tapped into the security system, activating the perimeter sensors she had installed. They weren't high-tech, but they were effective. The sensors sent out small pulses, invisible to the naked eye, but capable of detecting any movement in the yard. Emily watched as the pulse spread, covering every inch of the ground outside. It didn't take long before she saw what she was looking for. The assassin was getting close. She quickly toggled a switch on the control panel, and the garden lights flickered on. The assassin froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the weapon at his side. But before he could react, Emily was already moving. She grabbed a small dart gun from the shelf beside her, checking it for accuracy. It was non-lethal, but it would give her the advantage she needed. Emily slipped out of the security room, moving silently toward the back door. She knew exactly where the assassin was. He hadn't seen her, and that was his mistake. Emily stepped outside, the cool night air hitting her skin, and she moved like a shadow through the yard. Her body was low, her steps calculated. She wasn't in a hurry. She didn't need to be. She just had to stay hidden. As she approached the corner of the house, she could hear the assassin's footsteps. He was close now. She took a deep breath and pulled the dart gun from her side. It was small and quiet, designed for moments like this. Emily aimed carefully, her eye locked on the target. She fired. The dart hit its mark, striking the assassin in the neck. He staggered, his hand going to the wound as he tried to steady himself. Emily stepped out from her hiding place, her gun trained on him. She didn't speak. There was no need. The assassin knew what had happened. He knew he was caught. He didn't try to fight. He didn't even move. He simply fell to his knees, the tranquilizer taking effect. Emily moved forward, making sure he wouldn't escape. She checked his comm device, finding the same series of encrypted messages as before. Whoever was behind this attack was good. Too good. They were organized, coordinated, and Emily was just one woman standing in their way. She didn't have time to waste. The children were still in the safe room, but she couldn't be sure how long they would stay hidden. The assassins would come again, and when they did, they would be ready. Emily had to find out who was pulling the strings before it was too late. With the assassin incapacitated, she quickly returned to the house, moving toward the security room once more. She needed to figure out the next move. The house was on high alert now, the sound of distant footsteps echoing in the hallways. She had to stay ahead of them. She had to be smarter. Emily accessed the house's central computer, pulling up the encrypted messages from the assassin's comm device. It wasn't easy, but she managed to break through the firewall and decrypt the information. What she found shocked her. The attackers weren't just hired guns. They were part of a much larger organization, one that had been tracking her for years. They knew everything about her, her background, her training, her past. They knew what she was capable of, and they weren't going to stop until she was dead. Emily's mind raced as she pieced together the information. The organization behind the attack was known as Echelon, a covert group with ties to some of the most powerful people in the galaxy. They were mercenaries, assassins, spies, people who operated in the shadows. They didn't follow the rules. They did whatever it took to get the job done. And now, they were after Emily. DJ held the computer and stood still for a moment, letting the weight of the situation settle in. She had always known that her past would catch up to her eventually, but she had hoped it would be later, not now. Not when she had finally built a life for herself, a life that meant something. But there was no turning back now. She had to protect the children, and she had to stop Echelon before they could do any more damage. The next step was clear. Emily had to confront the leader of Echelon. She didn't know who they were yet, but she would find out. She would make them pay for what they had done. She wouldn't let them destroy the life she had fought so hard to build. The hunt was on, and this time, Emily wasn't just running from her past. She was going to take the fight to them. The night was still and quiet, but for Emily, the air was thick with tension. She stood in the security room, staring at the monitors that gave her a real-time view of the house. The intruders were still out there, somewhere. She had taken down 2 of them, but she knew there were more. They wouldn't stop until they had what they wanted.
Emily's mind raced as she thought about the information she had uncovered. The organization known as Echelon was not just some group of hired killers.
They were powerful, dangerous, and had the resources to track her every move. They knew her past, her skills, and her every weakness. But Emily had spent her entire life learning how to survive, and she was not going to let them win. The children were safe for now, tucked away in the hidden room she had prepared. She had ensured the room was well stocked with everything they would need if things got worse. But Emily couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Every minute she spent hiding felt like another step closer to losing them. She had to act, and she had to act now. She moved through the house with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen it all. The halls, the rooms, even the hidden pathways beneath the house. She knew them all like the back of her hand. It had taken years to set up this place, to turn it into a fortress, but even the strongest walls couldn't protect them from the enemy she now faced. Her fingers grazed the edge of the control panel as she turned her attention back to the security footage. She scanned the monitors, searching for any signs of movement. The perimeter sensors had already been triggered once, and she knew that the assassins were getting closer. They were like shadows, moving silently and efficiently, closing in on their target. The house was large, but it wasn't invincible. Emily knew that. She had planned for every possible outcome, but she couldn't have predicted this. She couldn't have known that Echelon would come after her, after the family she had sworn to protect. She had always thought her past was behind her, buried in the depths of her memories. But now, those memories were coming back to haunt her, reminding her of the life she had once led. She had run from that life, hidden from it, built a new identity and a new future. But the past always had a way of catching up with you. And now, it had caught up with her. Emily took a deep breath, steadying herself. She couldn't afford to be distracted by her past. She had to focus. The children were counting on her, and she wasn't going to let them down. She wouldn't let Echelon win. She moved through the house, the gun tucked into the waistband of her pants, hidden beneath her jacket. It was a small, compact weapon, but it was powerful enough to do the job. She wasn't planning to use it, unless she had to. She didn't want to kill anyone. She didn't want to be the person she had once been. But if it came down to protecting the family, she would do whatever it took. The hallway was empty. The only sound the soft hum of the house's cooling system. Emily's footsteps were quiet, measured. She had learned long ago that silence was the key to survival. In this world, noise was a signal, a weakness. Emily wasn't weak. As she moved deeper into the house, she noticed the signs of a struggle. A door was ajar. The furniture in the room slightly shifted. The house was no longer the peaceful sanctuary it had been when she first moved in. It had become a battleground, and she was fighting not only for her life, but for the lives of those she had come to love. The first assassin she had incapacitated was still unconscious, tied to a chair in the security room. He had said little before he passed out, only hinting at the larger force behind the attack. But Emily knew better than to trust a captured enemy. He had been trained to lie, to mislead. Whatever he had told her was likely only half the truth. She needed to find the real source, the person or people behind Echelon. Emily paused in front of the door to the kitchen. She could hear the faint sound of voices, low and murmured. They were close. Too close. She had no more time to waste. She moved toward the door, slowly, her breath steady. Her hand rested on the handle, but she didn't open it just yet. Instead, she pressed her ear to the door, listening carefully. The voices were clearer now. A group of people, whispering to each other. They were discussing something, but Emily couldn't make out the words. She had no intention of waiting around to hear more. With a quick motion, she twisted the handle and pushed the door open. The kitchen was dark, the only light coming from the dim glow of the refrigerator. In the far corner, a figure stood, watching the doorway. He had heard the door creak open, but it was too late. Emily was already moving. The first assassin she had encountered, the one who had spoken to her, was standing there, his hand reaching for a gun. But Emily was faster. She leaped forward, knocking the gun from his hand before he could fire. She grabbed his wrist, twisting it sharply, and the weapon fell to the floor with a soft clink. He tried to fight back, but Emily was already in control. She slammed him against the counter, pinning him there. His breath came in ragged gasps, and for a moment, Emily thought he might break free. But she was relentless. She tightened her grip on his wrist, twisting it, until he gasped in pain. "Who sent you?" Emily demanded, her voice cold and hard. The assassin's eyes narrowed and he spat in her face. Emily didn't flinch. She wiped the spit away, still holding him firmly against the counter. She wasn't playing games anymore. "You won't stop it," he sneered, his words dripping with contempt. "Echelon is unstoppable." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had suspected it, but hearing the name spoken aloud made it all the more real. Echelon wasn't just a group of mercenaries. They were a force to be reckoned with, an organization with power that reached far beyond anything Emily had imagined. "You don't understand," the assassin continued, his voice growing weaker as Emily tightened her grip. "They'll come for you." "They'll come for everyone?" Emily's grip tightened even further, her anger rising. She wasn't going to let him get away with this, not after everything she had worked for. "Who's in charge?" she asked, her voice low and threatening. But the assassin didn't answer. Instead, he let out a low laugh, one that sent a chill down Emily's spine. "You think you're the hero, don't you?" he said. "You're just a pawn in a much bigger game. They'll crush you, just like they've crushed everyone else." His words echoed in Emily's mind as she watched him struggle against her. She didn't know if he was telling the truth or trying to provoke her, but it didn't matter. She wasn't going to stop until she had answers. She pushed him away, sending him crashing to the floor. He didn't move, lying there like a broken doll. Emily didn't care. She had bigger things to worry about. Her eyes flickered toward the hallway, her mind calculating. There was still time to stop this, but she had to move quickly. She couldn't let Echelon take another step forward. She would finish this. She had no choice. Emily walked toward the front door, her mind focused on the task ahead. The fight wasn't over. It had only just begun, and this time, she wasn't going to let anyone stand in her way.